All right, out here working this afternoon. Some basic stuff. Got our helper Harper out here. Harper, you helping? Anyway, so when you have a firewall, a lot of times you have holes in the firewall that you need to cover up. And I know some people have wondered how do you do that to make it look clean and not to make it look completely terrible. So what we're gonna do this afternoon is we're gonna build some patch panels for the holes that we have right there. I just did that one. I'll show you what that one looks like. So this is what that one looks like. It's just a basic, ordinary patch panel. It's not that big a deal. So what it looks like is, whenever you come in here, it's gonna go over it like this. It's gonna go in there and get bolted in and possibly riveted in, and it actually goes right through the holes that are already there. So you already have these holes in here from the factory, and so instead of drilling more holes, I'm gonna utilize them and it will just go like that. So we need to make another one for over here. We have where the master cylinder used to be, right here, where 2 holes, and these are actually bolt holes. So I'm just gonna make a simple little patch panel. Okay, so what we're gonna do to do this is we're just gonna take some painter's tape, put you a couple pieces over it like this. This is actually, the purple stuff is the low tack. It's the low tack painter's tape, so it's not super sticky. So then what I like to do is I will take a marker and roughly just trace out where your hole's at, just for reference, and then you definitely want the bolt holes. Put a little bit of pressure so it kind of pushes the tape in so it guides your marker where it's supposed to be at. And then there's your location where everything's at. So then all you gotta do is take this and you'll peel this off like this, and then we'll take it to the bench and I'll show you what's next. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our piece that we just did, our tape, and we're just going to stick it on a piece of cardboard, and then you're just gonna start drawing your piece out like you want it. So I want mine just to be nice and simple, because when you go cut this out of carbon fiber or metal or whatever you cut it out of, remember, the more complex you make it, the harder it's gonna be to cut. And I'm gonna just cut this out of aluminum, so I don't want something too complex. So that is the rough layout of it. So now we're just gonna cut it out. So there you go, you got your basic shape cut out, and now you can only imagine what you do. Obviously from there, you could drill your holes out with a drill bit through the cardboard to test fit it, but just go hold it up to the piece and make sure that's what we want and make sure it looks good, and then we'll go from there. All right, so coming back over here to the car, that's our area that we need. And that's going to work perfect. So you can go right over it. There's your bolt holes. Now I will drill my bolt holes and make sure they all fit before I go ahead. And then we'll make that out of aluminum. We're obviously not gonna cut the center circle out. We're just gonna cut where the holes go through for the bolts, and it'll be good to go. That piece right there is already patched. That has something in it. And these smaller ones, that's actually an oval shape. And then that one's 2 round ones. You could make a little patch or a little delete panel if you wanted to go over that and bend it at 90 and shape it, but I think that's just excessive, so it's not like it's that big of a deal. So I'm just gonna simply put some silicone in there and smooth it out, along with these little holes, hit them with a little tiny bit of silicone. And then I may or may not build one for this piece, I'm not sure yet. It would be another little easy one like this to build, you know, but I might just put silicone over that, because you can see that hole's smaller than my finger. That one I can put my finger in, so it's a little bigger, but you could still smooth some silicone over this area. All right, so I'm about to put alignment on the car. These are some pieces that we made. All it is a bung welded in this end, bung welded in this end for a heim joint on this side, and then this side screws into your inner tie rod, because I didn't want to buy a kit because I think it was like 120, 115 for a heim end like tie rod kit, and I could have made it. I made it a lot cheaper than that. So it's just kit put together. Anyway, the shafts are a little too long on them, so I'm just going to cut them down a little so I can put them back on the car and go ahead and get the alignment done on this car this morning. That way, that's one more thing off the list. All right, so on any threads that you cut, always put a nut on first. Put your nut on first. That way, whenever you make your cut, then you can take your nut off and it will clean your threads back out. Versus if you make the cut and then you try to thread something on, sometimes the threads can be a little bit messed up and it'll make it extremely hard to thread the nut on. So always put a nut on first. All right, so all I'm gonna do now is snug these down so that they don't turn in the car. So, because I only want the inner tie rod to be able to spin. I don't want the heim to really be spinning. So I'm just gonna snug these down pretty decent before we put them in the car. One's left-hand thread, one's right-hand thread. All right, now we're just gonna put them in the car. But before we put them in the car, I wanna do the same thing on the inner tie rods, and I want to actually take 1/4 inch off. That way, since I took 1/4 inch off of the outers, take 1/4 inch off the inners, and that gives me a 1/2 inch shorter. It should give me plenty of room to adjust the tires on the front end. All right, so here's the deal. A lot of these kits that you can buy, like for your exact car, you're gonna pay more because you're paying for the convenience that they've already did the homework on the sizes, the thread pitch and all that. And they've put together a simple kit that will mail right to you and you'll be good to go. But if you take your time, do a little bit of homework, figure out your thread pitch, piece together some stuff off of like eBay, and do a little fabricating. Sometimes you can cut a lot of costs. I've cut a ton of costs on this car by building a lot of stuff and not buying. So on the front, you can see back, that's our bump steer kit, heim joint. Now you see how all this stuff is gonna go. We're gonna hook all this back up and get started on alignment. All right, so when you're doing your alignment, make sure you start out with your steering wheel straight. So you want your steering wheel to be as close to straight as possible. I mean, you can get in and line it up, or you can just eyeball it, but just make sure it's close as straight as possible. All right. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna eyeball the tire and get the tire as close to square looking down the side of the vehicle as possible, just off eyeball. Once you eyeball both tires and get it where it looks close to the eyeball, then you come back with a tape measure and measure from left to right to make sure that it's the same. Next thing I'm gonna do, now that I got the tires where I feel like they are off of eyeball, straight with the car, it's just eyeballing them, is I'm going to set the tire, you know, like this, where you have it where it leans in or leans out. So how I'm gonna do that is you can use a combination of things. You can either get you one of these that finds your angle, or if you don't have that, you can use you a magnetic level and just, you know, do it like normal with a level. That's just me. I want mine 90 degrees from the ground, straight. I'm not sure what the correct way is. I don't know a ton about alignment, but all I know is I want my tires at 90 degrees. That way, if they're leaning too far out that way, it will eat and wear the outside of the tire. And if it's leaning too far in this way, it will eat this. So ideally, you want it straight up and down, you know. All right, so there we go. Got the bubble now in between the lines, so they're supposed to be. So these upper A-arms are a complete pain in the butt. You have to, as you see in time lapse, I have to pull the bolt out every time to adjust them. Pull the bolt out, and then make sure you turn that one and that one equal. So turn this one, turn that one. Turn this one, turn that one. You know, turn that one 6 times, turn this one 6 times. So what I did before I got started off the camera is I actually took it, and because I've messed with this vehicle so many times and changed up so many times, I actually took the A-arm undone, took the ends completely all the way out, measured them, made sure they started the same, put it on there, and started from a point that I knew was equal on front to back because I wanted them the same. I am going to eventually upgrade to nicer arms, and all you got to do is turn a nut on them, and it moves them in and out without undoing that bolt. So these were just cheaper ones to get started with and get the car up and running, but I will change that later. Okay, a couple other things. Whenever this is another video, all this is PVC pipe. So I actually do not have a spring in the shock. This height right here simulates the height I want the car at ride height. So once I put the spring in, whatever the spring settles, I'll actually just run this up to put it back at this height, because this is the height that I want the car at. I picked up this tip off of another chassis builder that I've seen, that they just straight up use PVC pipe to set your ride height, because of course if you had your springs in there now, they would be sprung way open because there's no motor or nothing in there like that. And then if you lined it with it way up like that, then when it settled, it would throw everything out of line. So this is the ride height I want. That's the reason why I cut these spacers, to put the car at the ride height I want. When the springs go in and they collapse, we'll be adjusting the coilover up to put it back at this height. But once everything's together, we'll be checking the alignment again to make sure that it doesn't need to be fine-tuned. Another little tip, bottle jacks. So you can go to your local junkyard, grab some bottle jacks. But make sure you don't put the bottle jack up here. If you put it up here, then the A-arm is going to be sagging. So you want as much pressure on the outside as you can, just like when the tires are set on the ground. Because when they professionally align it at a alignment shop, the wheels are actually on caster plates and rollers that turn and let it pivot. But since mine's just on the ground and you don't want no friction on the tire, I just take a bottle jack, put it on each side, jack it up from the A-arm just enough where the tire will spin. And then that way you can move, you know, the tire like this, or you can move it like this, and there's no pressure on the actual tire. But make sure whatever you do that you're jacking up on the outside of the A-arm so that you're keeping it like this, which simulates there being pressure on it, which is like when it's sitting on the ground. If you jack it up there, it's gonna tilt the A-arm like this, and it's gonna throw everything out of whack. All right, so out here tonight and gonna try to dive in some on this pedal and work on getting the Wheelwood reverse swing pedal installed. So I just undid the bolts from the Firewall. I'm gonna get this factory brake pedal out of here, get it on the bench, and see what kind of brackets I need to build to mount up this Wheelwood. So here is the factory brake assembly. So this is where it bolts to the firewall. And then this is your steering column. Actually, it bolts in there. Anyway, this is the setup. So it's the pivot point, brake light switch just goes into the master cylinder when it used to be through the firewall. So this is gonna be a new one. So I'm thinking this one bolts up down here on the bottom. So I'm thinking just simply build some brackets that come off of this one, mount this thing right here beside this one so that we can put the support back in for the steering column. Pedal length is about the same, not bad at all. And yeah, I think that's gonna work. Just got to get the test fit in the master cylinder. Just ordered that, so that should be here within a week. Test fit that in and make some brackets. So mocking up the new brake pedal. Here's the old brake pedal. Here's the old brake pedal assembly. This actually also supports your steering column. So I'm trying to maintain this. Just tacked on a piece of corner iron off that. I think I'm gonna bolt the back of the cylinder here. But if you look, if I can get it in here, the pretty cool thing is look how close the pedal is. Like it's not off anyway. The pedal needed, or it's not far off. The pedal needed to move anyway. So here's the old pedal. 4 holes mount, and there's the new pedal where the 4 holes mount. So it's not too far off, and like I said, it needed to move in that direction anyway to be more center with the driver. So notched all this up here to clear that because that's where your brake fittings are going to be in the front and coming out the top. So that way you got room to do whatever you need to do with that. And I think I'll be able to definitely just mount off of that. So that's pretty cool. All right, so got the pedal mounted up on that bracket. Mocked it back in the car. You see the bracket up here that we're working on. Here's the new brake. So this is the factory pedal in the factory location, and that is the new pedal. So you can see the 4 mounting holes. Not too far off, and the pedal was already kind of low, so it's definitely not gonna hurt to be a little higher. And from the factory, this pedal was actually a long ways like this, sideways, so it didn't even hang down this low. So, I mean, you're talking really close to the same height as factory. It doesn't necessarily have the same, but when you swing it down, you can tell it actually gets even lower. So that worked out pretty good. See right there, I got the corner iron where, I mean, I'm gonna trim all this and make this look good, but it's not a bad starting point. So now what I'm gonna work on next is gonna try to start working on figuring out where the gas pedal is gonna go. It used to be way over here up near the tunnel, kind of, a little too close. So again, I wanna shift everything this way. So I think I'm gonna just build a bracket off of the side of the bracket I'm already working with to hang the gas pedal on. That way everything's kind of one assembly to take in and out the vehicle if I ever need to work on it. So we've got the pedal assembly tacked together basically. This is what I've got. You got your brake pedal, your master cylinder, and got the fuel pedal. I'm still working on straightening this all up and getting it all lined up. It's just mocked up, but that's how I'm thinking. So bend the bar, take it back to the factory brace, take it to the corner iron down here that I added to mount the brake master cylinder. And then that way the pedals are close to the same right there on your feet. So I think that's gonna work out pretty decent. I mean, by the time you weld up this little bracket and round all them edges off, it should look pretty decent. I'm about to put it back in the car and just test it. Probably drill a hole real fast and just put 1 bolt through this gas pedal and test it to see how it feels against the feet and go from there. And if it feels right, then weld it all up and go from there and move on. All right, so here is what we got. Brake pedal and the gas pedals mocked up. So we got our factory column. There's where the steering wheel, there's the gauges where the steering wheel goes. Master cylinder, and this dash does get a lower piece, so you won't see the master cylinder. Brake pedal and throttle pedal. And then the throttle pedal, you can see I've got taped up, so it pivots. Of course, when you push down on that, that throws the lever like this, so it pulls the cable through the firewall. I just have to run it through the firewall. Still got to weld all this in, grind the edges, make it look good. But the only other thing I think I'm gonna do is actually bend this where it comes this way just a little to scoot this pedal just a little closer to the brake pedal. But they're both roughly at the same height, and this one is actually indexed. That can be adjusted whether it goes down more or wherever you want it to sit at. So I think that's what I'm gonna rock and roll with. And then the way I have it mounted here is if I ever wanted to space it down and move the pedal down this way more, I could put some spacers in it and do that. So I think that's gonna work pretty good. I think I'm gonna pull it back out, weld it up for tonight, call it a night, and get started back on it tomorrow. I got it back up here on the bench, and I was thinking I'm gonna run a spring, drill a hole through here and run a spring up to here. That way it keeps the pedal pulled up. I mean, of course, the throttle cable will keep it pulled back on the throttle body from the spring of the throttle body, but that'll just help keep the pedal pulled back as if drill a hole in this curved part right here and put something up here. I put this screw through here temporarily, just playing with the idea, because it's a good stop. You know, so when you go to push the pedal down, you don't push it to the floor. And I could bolt something through here. Throttle cable would probably be hooked here, but this is just mock-up. But I could come through here with something, or even here, and build some kind of stop so that you don't push it to the floor. And then also when the spring pulls it up, it'll hit back there. That way it keeps it pulled up, because if you don't have something to stop it up here, back there, then it would obviously just pull it way too much far up. But now all I got to do is weld all that in. I think this side is fine. I probably need to run some kind of brace at a 45 this way, and then I need to catch this mounting hole right here on something. So I just now need to figure out that. As you can see, this brake pedal, I'll have it bolted back there in the back, but then it takes a bolt through the front right here. So I need some kind of mounting point in the front for the front of that for support. So maybe I'll catch something for both of these to brace this and to brace this. I don't know. I just kind of mess with it. It just kind of comes through me is how I do these. See, if you just stare at something long enough, then eventually it'll just come to you. So there's a simple brace thing. There was actually a bolt hole from the factory right there. So that's gonna be a perfect plug weld, where you can plug weld it, and then just took a small rod and run it at a 45 down to the corner, weld around that, and that's gonna work perfect and brace it. I'm gonna call that one a night. This is the crap that I built. You can hear the popcorn like sounding before, because I use at the house a Harbor Freight welder, and I have not taught myself how to TIG weld yet. Mike does all of my important welding, but this will just be underneath the dash. You won't see it, so instead of bugging Mike as I try to do anything I can by myself, try to do it on my own. Since you can't see this, I wasn't worried about bugging him and making him TIG it or make it with gas or all that. So it's braced pretty back, so braced pretty good. So if you recall, that's the throttle pedal. So that one's braced up into there. And then this is where the master cylinder sat. And so when you apply brake pressure to keep it from twisting, of course I've got this front tab braced up to here, and then the bottom of this braced down to here so it don't turn. So this thing is pretty stout. It's definitely a little heavier, but it actually does not feel much heavier than the original assembly, because the original assembly had an extra bracket here, and then the pedal was like solid steel, the brake pedal. So it definitely added a good amount of weight. Probably it countered out to these I put back in. And I tried not to use flat plate or anything like that. Originally I was gonna do, you know, come in here and do your braces like this and stuff, but then I'm trying to get better at this stuff and make stuff look more professional. Anytime you can use rod, it's gonna look better than plating everything. But obviously some stuff you do have to have plates in a situation like this. Even though I hate using corner iron, it works perfect for stuff like this. I mean, this really, I should probably come in here and 45 this to knock a few ounces out of it, and just to make it look better. Anytime you can not do squares like this, squares look like crap. See, this is where everything comes look like crap. Rods, my welding looks like crap, but rods look a whole lot better than having corner iron or flat plate everywhere. So you just get a better looking product like that out of rods than you do doing flat plate. I mean, because imagine if I would have flat plated like triangles in here. I mean, it just would have really looked terrible. But like I said, I hate using corner iron in places like this, but it just works. In this situation, it just works. It makes sense. I had it. It's not gonna be seen. It's under the dash. But I think that's gonna be a wrap on the pedal assembly. I think I'm gonna go ahead and get it painted tonight. I know I said probably an hour ago that I was done for tonight, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and get it sprayed and then call it. But overall, I'm happy with it. I mean, I don't know. The only other way to improve that would be to simply learn how to TIG weld and to TIG weld it versus doing MIG. But sold the tires are off of the rims. Sold the tires today. I had 27.5s by 4.5s by 17s. And I had went with them because they were a little cheaper whenever I first started building this car. And then I later learned that the 27.5s compared to a 16 will actually hurt your reaction time, and the 26 will give you a better reaction time. And I need the car to sit lower. So if you can see right here, I have, man, I'm not used to doing this backwards. I have my positive and negative lugs that go from the inside of the car. So when you turn the wheel, it actually would hit it. So whenever you turn the wheel like that, the tire would actually hit the lugs. So now, with going with the 26, it's gonna help it clear the lugs a lot better. But this weekend we should be able to get all this back together and get this wrapped up and hopefully be able to set the motor. So we're gonna put the interior back together, get the steering wheel back in, pedal assembly back in, all that back in tomorrow, hopefully, and then we can set the motor. Because the reason why I have to do the pedal assembly first is the pedal assembly actually bolts through the firewall down there, the plates we made at the beginning of this video. I think I'm gonna put them in this video. So I need to go ahead and get that bolted up before I put all that in. Man, I got crap all over my face. So paint this assembly, and then in the morning come out here and clean up all this crap, because the baby does come out here and she likes to help me, and she'll be dirty and her mother will kill me here in a minute with all of this dust and cut and crap all over the place. And I swore that after I painted the front end of this car that this thing was not, no more cutting work in here, and none of that crap was gonna be back in here. But obviously I can't keep from cutting and welding something, so. But that's a wrap for tonight. All right, just wanted to go over all this with y'all before we put it in the car, because it's a lot easier to do on the bench than it is in the car. So this is what we ended up with from last night. Got the brake cylinder, master cylinder mounted up the final way. Ended up putting some tabs, body clips on it. That way I could just run a bolt down through the top and you don't have to hold a wrench on the bottom. It's gonna make it easier if you're having to service it or taking it in and out. Always try to get a body clip on it whenever you can. That way you don't have to hold a nut or a wrench. Got the throttle pedal all bolted on, bolted it through. just like I had planned. Painted everything a nice silver, that way it don't look that bad. And that's gonna be the shot from the floor. And you see the pedals, they are about the same height whenever they're in service position or when they're in normal position. I don't even know what you call that. But yeah, pretty happy with it. So we're gonna get this installed and then move on from there. So going to set the motor back in to actually purely test fit the brake stuff, where I'm gonna bolt up the brake pedals back in. The master cylinder is on the inside of the car, but the reservoir, we are using a remote reservoir system, so I'm thinking it's gonna go over here. But I can't remember the clearance in the head, so I actually have to put the motor back in to literally just check that clearance and then pull it back out so I can mount up the remote master cylinder and finish up the, well, you have to pull it back out to drill the master cylinder and get everything bolted up, because you're not gonna be able to do it with the motor in there to drill the holes. So then you lift the motor back out, drill it, put the master cylinder back in, and should be able to put the motor back in it once we bolt up the firewall. But after we welded them tabs, that put a weld on the backside, my mid plate was so tight that it actually bowed out the mid plate like this from the welds, or I'm sorry, it bowed it in like that from the welds being on there. So I actually have to shave some off the mid plate. This is the mid plate. I'm gonna go ahead, so bolt holes right there, so I'm gonna go ahead and take a good amount off the thickness of a weld. We might weld some pretty good welds on there. Take this off and bevel this also. Actually, it'd be, yeah, bevel this side, because this is where the weld lays in here for the mount to get clearance, so that the mid plate's not bowed. Because with it in there, with the mid plate bowed like this, it actually puts the oil pan where it's scraping against that gusset. So I mean, I'm literally fitting this thing down in there. I don't have a 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch to spare. That's how tight everything is. Being I had the motor really low. When I built this car, I had read a lot about having my crank line center at anywhere from 8 inches to 12 inches off the track at ride height. That's how they build chassis cars, a lot of them. Not necessarily no prep, but like fast radial cars, because that keeps your weight down lower from the front end coming up. If you want your front end to come up more, a lot of people actually, of course, put the motor back and up higher. That gives it more pivot onto the back tire, from what I've learned. But when I built this car, I wanted to go ahead and put the motor down in this bad boy as low as possible. Also, I wanted bragging rights about factory firewall, factory trans tunnel, all this up here. So I set the motor down really low in this car to clear the transmission and all that. So none of the trans tunnel didn't have to be cut out, and it's all flat factory floorboards. Also, I was able to accomplish my crank line center. My center of my crank line is dead in with my pinion. Like the motor, how I've got everything built, is shooting straight into the pinion, just like when they build chassis cars. So even though this car does not look like a full-blown tube chassis car, it actually has, I've tried to incorporate a lot of the stuff that I've read or learned about from reading into this car, so that it hopefully can be the best as possible. But with all that said, I don't have an 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch to spare, so I'm gonna have to trim this motor plate, and once I get that trimmed, then put the motor plate back in, and I can finally sit the motor back in and work on the next step. All right, so finally got the motor set back in there, got the motor plates put back on. So just like on the mid plate, where I had to do some grinding to the edge because of all the welds. Same thing I got going on up here with the front plate. You can see the gap right there. So it's just the welds. I build everything so tight that this needs to just be 45 in the back to clear these welds that weren't here whenever I built this, because I think I had a couple tacks on the backside and had it smooth, and now that we got some welds on there, it's so tight to the bar that it's hitting. So clearance the motor plate whenever I take it off. But some of y'all haven't seen it. That's what the motor plates look like. I did make them myself because the kits online were just absolutely ridiculous for some plates. The bolts that I have through the motor are just some hardware store bolts. They're not final. They were literally just the cheap ones for mock-ups. I can figure stuff out because actually the procharger goes through some of these for some of the mounts, so I will have to go back and change it out in grade 8 or stronger bolts once I figure out all the spacing on that, because everything I had done up to this point was literally just mock-up. Nothing was finalized. So now I'm trying to work into the finalized state. But I stuck it in there, and just like I thought with the master cylinder, I think the master cylinder is going to bolt somewhere right here. So as you can see, you just can't get a drill in here. So I think the motor will have to come back out to drill that, but it's easy enough. I can take the motor out and pull it back out, or I can drill from the inside if I just mark it. I might just do that, the way the motor can just stay in there and hopefully not have to come back out for the most part. But now I can move forward with the oil mounting, or oil filter mounting, because I think I'm actually gonna weld something off of this. So we're gonna mock up the procharger back on here and then figure out where we're gonna mount some other stuff so we can take these aluminum plates to the shop this week and have Mike TIG them all. And then I have a spacer on that one over there that needs to be TIGged on. So that's where we are at the moment. I'm gonna keep on trucking and figure out some stuff, and then I'll catch y'all up and show you where I'm at. All right, so what I got going on here is working on a dust rock shield. So of course, as your tire is turning in circles like this, it is gonna be a street car, so it will be slinging up some dirt and rocks. So I just didn't want it to go straight into the turbo. So I'm working on I'm sorry, my brain is in the clouds, into the procharger. So I'm working on just a shield, and this will tighten down a little bit better, and I'll put some foam gasket around here to make sure it's nice and tight to the bar. But hopefully that will just help the rocks not go up in here. And of course, you know, in here is a shop mount, so that's all nice and closed off. But I'm hoping that just helps a little bit, keep some of it out. It's better than nothing, I guess. And I also can put a screen over here, but of course the screen's not necessarily gonna stop the dirt, and I don't want to put really a filter over it. Number one, there's not room. Number two, that will to a certain extent hurt that airflow. So that's what we are working on at the moment. I'm gonna keep shaping this, get this thing painted, and get this thing put on there. Harper, tell everybody what we're doing. Today we're just working on the motor. All right, so just to catch up where we're at today, I got the motor set in, as you seen earlier. The intake is just sitting on there. I'm still in the mock-up phase of some stuff. Alternator, hung it back on. I'm gonna start finalizing spacers this week on this, getting the other spacers I need, because I added motor plate there. The spacers that come with a kit on some of these pieces actually have to be shortened. Need to get this pulley swapped out because it is not in line. It's a F-150 pulley, and I think they sit in a little bit more than a Mustang pulley sits out a little more. I think a Mustang pulley will put it in line. So I got to get the alternator back off, run it by the local alternator shop this week, and see if they can swap that over. Possibly got the procharger put back mocked up on. This bolt right here doesn't match the threads in there, so I got to take care of that this week. And then this one right here is supposed to go to here, but again, there's a motor plate there, so another custom link spacer will have to be done there. I'll take care of all that this week. Started drilling the hole for the oil filter location, snapped the tap, and so I'm gonna just drill that out more and put a bolt through it. I was trying to get fancy with it and have it where a screw is set in there. But basically, I'm gonna put this back on. I'm gonna have Mike weld that back on in the morning, and we'll smooth it all out, because I want to mount this right here. So I'm gonna mount this on the front of the motor, down here on the motor plate, and just need that little bit of extra. So these motor plates I made are 1/2 inch thick, so I do not feel like cutting all of these curves and everything again, so it's easier just to have Mike weld that little ear back on. That way I can drill it. And it's not structural anyway, it's just for that little thing. It's just gonna look cleaner and grind it all out. Just got done with the procharged dust shield, rock shield. So all I did is wrapped it in some cheap black carbon fiber vinyl that I have laying around. The fender goes on this so you actually won't see that. So it's just so it's not completely ugly. And then went ahead and painted it on the inside. So then this will probably get a clamp around it, and I still haven't put the foam on it to cover up the last little bit of gaps. But that should help keep some dust and rocks out of it, hopefully. Harper's not happy about that. So got all that on there. We'll work on that some more this week. Finalizing that piece. I just got to get that edge, like I said from my other video, to go underneath the tray down there. I just put some little rubber hose on it right now, but I do want to get some of that door edge stuff, and I'm gonna put on the tray, and I'm gonna put on the edge of that to get that tighter to the bar. So on the inside, you've seen we worked on the pedals. Of course, I made a mistake on that, got to fix that. But I actually messed my back up earlier today fighting with that motor. So I did not mess with the pedals today. But you can see what we got going on here. That bar right there, get you up in here. That bar right there is hitting the column. See here where we at. Right there. The column needs to go up. So that actually hits the column. You can see that bar's in the way. So all I need to do is come in there and cut that bar back out. I need to pull this assembly back out, cut that back out, and put a bent one in there, and then weld that back in and finish welding it up. But overall, that's all in place. It's gonna work. It's just I have that one modification. It's not a big deal. Just didn't have time to do it today. And figured out, like I said earlier, I'm gonna be able to leave the motor in, and I'm pretty sure this is where your brake pedal assembly goes. Bolts in here and here. So I think I'm gonna build a bracket off of this just to put the brake reservoir right here. That way I'm not broken it through the firewall, because it's pretty deep up in the dash. And if you ever have to take it off and fight with it, that way all you'd have to do is pull 2 nuts off of that, and then the fluid reservoir would come right off. So we're gonna work on that this week during the afternoon, during the weekdays, and get that wrapped up, and then just keep on getting it. Like I said earlier in the video, I believe this video's taking place over 2 weekends, so I'm sorry if I'm jumping around. But I did sell the tires the other day. They were 27.5s, and I went down to a 26 to improve reaction time and to get the car a little lower. Pretty sure I went over that, but yeah. So that's where we're at for this weekend. That's an update on the car. Got a decent amount done, still got a ways to go, but making progress. I do have a couple more parts coming in this week. I think the burn down tubes are in Wilmington on the FedEx truck. They should be here, so we're gonna custom make burn down tubes that come out like this, or now I'm kind of thinking about making them where they wrap under and go under the intake. But I don't know for sure yet. Until I get them, it's gonna be tight to get them in there. But making some progress. Got the all the water line fittings in the heads in the front. And let's see here, that's pretty much it. Let's see here, I did set this in place, so this is where the burn down tank's gonna be. So that's the fuel cell. I think it's like a 15 gallon. Anyway, this was a little 2.5 gallon fuel cell for like $45 off eBay. So that was a freaking score versus building a burn down tank. Like, you'd be retarded to do that. So then all Mike's gotta do is, out of the pipe I ordered to do the burn down tubes on the valve cover, he'll come in here and weld in some tubes to tie the lines in. They'll come up here and go right in there, and then the vents are going to come out here and loop over. That's going to be the vents with rubber lines. I don't think I'm gonna go through the trunk lid. I think that's just a little too hardcore racy for this. And then the drains are down there that I will go through a panel that I've also made. Sorry, it's hard to see right now. I'm trying to hold the baby with one hand and videotape with the other hand. But yeah, she's coming together. So we'll wrap that up over the afternoons during this week, and then get back on this thing next weekend, and hopefully we got some parts in this week, and move on from there. So we're definitely making progress. It's eating a lot of money fast. That's my issue right now, is I do this on the side. I don't take money from my business to build this car. This car is built on the side, and this car eats a lot of my side hustle really fast. So I have to do it piece by piece. Harper is talking a lot. So But that's your update. Please like, comment, and subscribe. That way it'll help everything grow. Also, the other weekend I grabbed some used slicks off Turbo John. They still got plenty of life left in them. There's some ones that come off of his car. They're the W ones, so they're the wide ones, but I'm gonna put them back on because I know when we start this car, or put them on, not back on, I'm sorry. When I first built this car, I actually put it on radials, and since then, learning everything I've learned over this past 2 years in this adventure, I've realized that I think the radial cars are gonna be a little too fast for me, and there's not gonna be too much point of a radial, and I'm probably gonna fit in a little bit more on slicks. So this week, we're definitely gonna get the slicks put on the car and swapped over just so it's done, and the new tires for the front should be here on Tuesday. So we're gonna get some tires put back on the front, and I'm gonna get some slicks put on the rear, and that's just gonna be one more piece to the puzzle done. Harper, you are not letting Daddy update everybody. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, share. Let's grow this thing, and I'll teach y'all everything that I've learned and any secrets and help you in any way that I possibly can. So comment if you want me to go over anything or show anything. Thanks, y'all.